You are listening to episode 14 of the Simple Farmhouse Life podcast. Today I'm going to tell my handmade story, how I learned to sew, when I started, what kind of things I've made over the years, and then do a little interview with one of my favorite small shops that I've met over on Instagram, and I'm gonna have him share his reasons why they've chosen to work with handmade sellers and why they value handmade and artisan so much. My name is Lisa, mom of 6 and creator of the blog and YouTube channel Farmhouse on Boone. Join me as I share with you my love for creating a handmade home from scratch cooking and a little mom and entrepreneur life along the way. I've talked about this a lot on my blog, but I feel like people get kind of hung up with sewing and making things mostly because of overcomplicating. I feel like this with a lot of things. I really do. I am the type of person that just likes to get things done and I don't worry about the details. So with sewing, there are all of these complicated terms. And trust me, I get corrected all the time because I don't care about technical stuff. I see a dress and I kind of study how it's put together and then I try to replicate it and I break every rule in the book. I don't really know how to do darts. I never baste stitch. I hardly ever press and I hardly ever use pins. I just like to do things in my own little way and ignore every pattern, every rule. And if you're like that and you feel like you can't sew because you don't know all the technical jargon, right off the bat here, I just want to encourage you that that does not have to be your story if you want to start making things for your own home. For me personally, I love handmade because I love that expression of creativity, of taking something in a raw state and transforming it into something useful and beautiful. This happens in the kitchen whenever I look into my refrigerator, my pantry, and I see a bunch of random ingredients and I dream up ways to use them that maybe aren't even from a recipe book, but it's just a really fulfilling thing to transform something in that way and make it beautiful. Same thing goes when it comes to raw materials like linen and an antique tablecloth that I find at the thrift shop. Taking that and making it into something like a dress for my little girl or an apron or some curtains is just so fun to see that pretty before and after. I think we all kind of love that. I'm one of those people that believes that we're all creative. I think that we are created in God's image and He's obviously creative because He's the creator. So we all do appreciate creativity. And I think everybody's a little bit creative. I have a little sister who is a blogger. She has never considered herself a creative person. And I think that's because we have these ideas of what creativity means. So when we were kids and we were in the 4-H club, she was not into sewing. She would rush through it, sew all crooked and cut everything out sloppy. And so she assumed she's just not the type of person who comes up with an idea and makes something. She's not really into art or anything like that. I'm definitely more into the creative things than she is, but I think we have the idea wrong. Handmade and creativity can take so many forms. So my sister Laura, she has created a beautiful blog. She makes all kinds of things from scratch, from food to body and household products, takes these beautiful photos and expresses her creativity in that way. Some people create businesses, some people sew dresses, and I think as humans, we all have a tendency to create and be creative. I think that we all have it in us to, especially if there is the desire. So Laura, she might never want to sew, but she loves to make dinner in creative ways. I started making when I was probably about 5 years old. I remember at my grandma's house making things in her sewing room. She always had her sewing machine out and I would make her little pin cushions by sewing scrap fabric together and adding a little bit of stuffing. And she always acted like she just loved it, like I did the best job ever. I made her a chain extender for her ceiling fan in her bedroom because she couldn't reach it. I just braided some yarn and added a little tassel at the end, but she kept that thing on there for probably 20 or 30 years. I don't even know. It was on there for a really long time. When I was in high school, I loved making those skirts where you rip out the seams in the jeans and then you overlap the pant leg or the seam that goes under the crotch overlapping and then sew it down to make a skirt from jeans. I wore those all the time when I was a kid. Sometimes I'd add the jean piece back in the middle to make it a little bit longer, and sometimes I'd take some smiley face or peace sign fabric and put it in the middle so that it had a little triangle cutout of my favorite fabric. I remember in high school, I really loved music, and I would stitch into the waistline all of my favorite band names with embroidery thread and wear that to school. And then in college, I remember really loving watching Project Runway and watching how they designed and their design process. But it wasn't until I was a mom that I really started sewing things that I could actually use. So I remember when Ruthie was little, I bought some Oliver plus S or Oliver and S, I'm not really sure how you say it, sewing patterns. I worked through a few of those with my mom. That experience helped me to learn the process of how a dress is put together. I feel like before that, I didn't even understand how a garment was put together. And I feel like once you learn the basics of something, whether it be cooking or sewing or making anything, once you learn how it works, then you can run away with it and make it your own. So after working through a few patterns for my daughter Ruthie, I started taking all of her dresses, even the store-bought ones, out of her closet and just studying them, studying how long the hemline was and studying how the sleeves were attached to the armhole and just looking at what they did to finish off the collar. I became obsessed after that. I started sewing like a mad woman. I actually shared some of these pictures over on my blog a few years ago in my bow in the back summer dress tutorial. So if you go to farmhousehumboon.com, just search bow in the back and the tutorial will come up. It's a dress that I have a pattern tutorial for making a knot dress. And I have in there tons of pictures of my creations over the years. Some of them are almost kind of funny. Like I would take an adult skirt and add a little waistband to the middle and make a girl's dress from an adult skirt. I remember buying these floral curtains from a local thrift shop and making my daughter this little halter dress. And I made this little flower brooch thing that went on it and added an apron and a bow and ruffles. And I was having the time of my life with it. I started selling my creations on Etsy because I was making so many one-of-a-kind pieces and my daughter could never possibly wear them all. And so I would just take and make these one-of-a-kind dresses just to fulfill my creative drive. Now, later on, I took the whole Etsy business a little bit more seriously and created a few types of dresses that I could make over and over and over again and sell them. That got really boring. It was way more fun to find the random embroidered linen tablecloth and make a dress than it was to make the same thing over and over again. But I would say this period of time is probably what taught me the most about sewing and making things. I feel like anything in life, you learn more by doing than reading about it. For example, I was making her these little skirts and I used to sew the waistlines into both sides of the skirt and then sew the side seams together and have all of this bulk. And then I started realizing when I looked at it that, oh, if you sew the side seams, then fold down the waistband, that you would have less bulk. I was learning so many things like that just from experimenting. And it was fun because I was using random cheap fabrics and transforming them. I did this at every nap time, late at night. Anytime I got the chance, I was playing around on my sewing machine. I remember even doing it with Ruthie on my lap. I was learning about different fabric designers and how to piece together different patterns. I'd take like a small print floral and mix it with a large print floral and put the little gingham apron in between the two, and just not following any of the rules, learning on my own pace and getting really familiar with my sewing machine. There were so many mistakes, but I ended up with some things that I was really proud of, and it taught me so much about sewing just from trying things. Now, after the two girls, which were a dream to sew for, they were perfect for me to learn all these sewing skills. I had 4 boys. That's when I started getting into sewing things for my home. I learned how to sew slip covers, struggled through first slip covering my couch, which didn't turn out that great, but we used that for many, many years. And then I did a little bit better on my next slip covering project. I started working on my wingback chair slip covers, which had a little bit more of a tailored finish than the couch. But again, I was improving with each time that I sewed something. I sewed little ties for the boys. I'd make things so that all of my kids kids would match. My handmade story in the kitchen is a lot the same. I just did a lot by trial and error. Now, when I first started cooking, I followed recipes. It's kind of like when I first started sewing, I used patterns. And then once I saw how this all worked, I was able to really make up my own ideas. So once I learned the basics, I learned how to cook a whole chicken and the difference between sauteing and boiling and which things you would do which things for. Then I really was able to experiment and try my hand at things with reckless abandon, no recipe in hand. I learned what spices went with what. I learned the science behind developing gluten and that garlic put into a pan of butter will get crispy. All of those little things just come from trial and error, and that is the story of my handmade journey over these years. It is just trying and failing and learning a little bit along the way. I hope that my handmade story encourages you to try some things in your homes. Get out some fabric and mess up a little skirt for your daughter, and I promise you next time it'll be a little bit better. Now I'm going to introduce to you Matt from Heart and Hess. We're going to talk about why handmade is important to them in their business. This is an Instagram friend of mine. Their shop has changed a lot over the years, and I've just loved following along with it, and so I thought it'd be fun to bring him on here. So I am on the phone here with Matt. He is from the website heartandhess.com. I just love talking to shop owners. It's one of the best things about Instagram these days is I'm able to connect with so many small shop owners. I've met people who make candles, people who make pillows. I mean, there's so many amazing things, and I obviously love that handmade lifestyle. So Matt, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you and your sister do, when you started your shop, and why?
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me on. Yeah, my sister Sabrina and I, she's at home with her little one tonight. We started a company initially called finishingtouches.com. And she's always been a big fan of home decor, and we both found ourselves in a position in our lives about 3 years ago where we wanted to start a business and do something and create something. That eventually turned into what we have now, which is Heart and Hess, her last name and mine, which is a home decor subscription company. And what we do specifically that kind of sets us apart is that instead of going to wholesalers and importers that are bringing in mass-produced products and from China and over other places overseas, we're connecting with artisans, fair trade and American artisans, who provide us with beautifully crafted pieces at a great price that we can then put into our subscription box and surprise our customers with every single month. I've got to tell you, there's no shortage out there of people who are making beautiful things.
So when did you guys start your shop?
We started Finishing Touches in April of 2017, and that's when we were offering entire room boxes. So people could spend a couple $100 and you'd get everything, the finishing touches, as we said, that you would need to decorate a room. But we actually found it pretty limiting because you had a high price point and not a lot of people wanted all of the exact same products. So we moved into selling individual products and had a hard time with the advertising on that, because then you have to really, if you offer 500 products in your store, you need to find the audience for all 500 products. It gets pretty expensive. So, it's like, what can we do to make sure that people are able to get a hold of things that we think are truly timeless pieces, but help them make that choice, help them find the variety, but also keep it affordable for people. And that's when we decided that a subscription box was the way to go.
You didn't start on Etsy. You started with your own website.
No, we've never sold on Etsy, but a lot of our makers sell.
I was just curious because I think a lot of people in my audience are interested in knowing about starting their own little shop and how to get started. I know that you work with a lot of handmade and small shop owners, and then you also yourself started out obviously as a small shop owner. What would be some tips that you would give if somebody is thinking about that? My
most effective piece of advice, because anybody can. There's a ton of information out there about starting an Etsy shop or starting if you're interested in doing a subscription box. Cratejoy is an excellent place to get started. We started selling our subscription box there, cratejoy.com, and we still sell there, but we do most of our business through our own site. So there's a lot of helpful advice out there from companies like Etsy and Cratejoy and dozens of others on how to get the actual functional business started. But a lot of people get tripped up on, what to offer, especially if they're not like, I don't have a crafting bone in my body, I'm sorry to say.
You just like to partner with the crafters.
Exactly. And so the advice that I would give is you'd be surprised what you can accomplish if you just ask. A lot of my best pieces come from seeing something on Etsy or in an article or on a blog post and just reaching out to the maker and saying, hey, are you interested in being in our box? Or are you interested in selling on our site? And there's a lot of very enthusiastic people that are looking for more exposure themselves or new people to partner with. And it helps you build a community around yourself as well, because you build relationships with them. So you end up with more people to connect with.
That's what's so amazing about social media and about shopping small is that connection. Every piece has a little part of you in it whenever somebody makes it from scratch, handmade. And is that what you guys feel like is the reason that you started this business? What is your take on handmade, and why do you all value that so much?
Sabrina and I are both big believers in supporting communities, whether it's our own community or whether it's a community, a group of makers overseas or a cooperative. We spend so much time in this country supporting corporations. And that's funny because we are a corporation, albeit a small one, but we spend our money at a lot of corporate locations as Americans. And when we were looking at what to sell, I was talking to Sabrina and I said, I don't feel comfortable not knowing where these products come from. And that began a research project, so to speak, for me, where I really started looking at where the home pieces that my sister was purchasing and other people purchased come from. And I was appalled. Like the money that you're spending is not supporting a crafter or an artisan who designed that piece. It's supporting a mass-producing corporate giant. And there's a place for that in the economy, sure. But when I'm going to buy ticking stripe shower curtains from South Carolina, and the maker tells me, I want you to know, like, you're not just supporting me. You're supporting the people that help me sew them. You're the people that own the machines. You're helping support in the community where I go grocery shopping, the movie theater where I take my kids. She called it the democratization of style, which I really liked, because that's what it is. It's using our dollars to support our community out here in this country and in communities overseas. We've worked with communities. There's one co-op out in Nepal that supports. They make cashmere blankets, and they only train disabled Nepalese to create these so that they have a stable source of income. There's another company down in Mexico that we've worked with that supports mothers of families where the husbands have either left the country or they've died in the drug wars. And so through this crafting process and through the fair trade mechanism, so that they're making the money that they're supposed to for their craft, they're supporting their whole family off of this stuff and making beautiful pieces, learning a trade skill, and some of them going into business on their own. So whether that's happening in Mexico or whether that's happening in Texas, whether we're supporting a new crafter who's just started on Etsy and makes something truly gorgeous, or we're supporting someone that's been in business 20 years, we know the faces and stories of the people who are providing the products.
That's amazing. And it's amazing because today we have the opportunity for those people to reach people like us. You and I live in different states, and I've bought from artisans online. I've been a shop owner myself, and before that just wouldn't have been possible at all. Also, so for me too, I like that everything, whenever I buy from a handmade maker, is unique. It's a one-of-a-kind thing. Have you found some really neat pieces that you don't feel like you just would see at TJ Maxx or something like that?
Oh, 100%. 100%. And I get in trouble for this, so, feel free to drop this in the final edit. But one of my biggest fights, and I say fight, but it's really just me grousing like an old man telling kids to get off my porch, is with Rae Dunn. And she makes beautiful stuff. She absolutely does. The Rae Dunn phenomenon is truly a phenomenon. But I will tell you, That's not it is the implication of handmade without it actually being handmade. She makes the piece, she designs the pieces, but they're still made overseas and sold in TJ Maxx. You're just supporting the same stuff that when you're buying, from another big box store. What we try to do now is say, where are the hidden gems, the little pieces that are so unique and so interesting that maybe a lot of people wouldn't have ever thought of. There's a piece in our box that's getting mailed out on February 1st. It is a small concrete, it's an indoor fireplace called Flicker. And it's this nice kind of modern concrete piece. It's very unobtrusive. You put about 1.5 ounces of rubbing alcohol in it, and then you light the vapor on top, and it burns for about an hour. It's a warm, inviting piece. And it's beautiful for a tabletop, or if you've got guests coming over for a party, and it's heavy and sturdy, and it's made out in Tennessee. And it is truly a unique product. There's nothing else on the market like it. And to be able to bring that to people and for them to say, I had no idea. One of my favorite stories is I have a customer. She's just, since the first box, has been hugely enthusiastic. And I get emails from her saying, you should put this in there and you should put that in there. We sent her the box on January 1st. And I get this email saying, I loved this box. And my husband would say he doesn't care. But the second that box comes and I open it up, he's sitting there right there with me, excited about every piece that I pull out. Most of the pieces are going to be a conversation piece, and that's really what we strive for.
I have a friend, when I first moved to our new area, I found a friend pretty quickly who is a local potter in our area. And she has a kiln in her garage, and she has the wheel and everything. And I just love going over there, and I want to commission her to make me some plates because I'm like, this is so unique. When it's handmade, someone's effort went into it, and a lot of times it's higher quality, it's unique, it's one of a kind, all those same reasons why I've always been drawn to handmade forever. Tell us where we can find you.
You can find us at hartandhess.com, HART and HESS. You can pick up either a premium subscription or a standard subscription if you want a smaller, less expensive box. And they ship monthly. They ship on the 1st of every month. So we're really excited to bring this stuff to you and help our customers connect with makers and artisans from all over the world and the country. So
thank you so very much for sharing your story as a shop owner and as a person who endorses all things handmade and artisan style.
Absolutely. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I wish you and your audience the best of luck and a happy new year, although it's a little late. And thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Simple Farmhouse Life, My Handmade Story. If you're ready to get started sewing in your own home, check out my free email course. I have lessons for everything from threading your machine, your bobbin, tension problems, all that stuff that scares you, all the way through making some very simple projects. I send it straight to your email inbox so that you can learn to sew in very easy steps and get started. You can find that at bit.ly/farmhouse sewing series. That is bit.ly/farmhouse sewing series. All one word, no spaces. All right, well, thank you so much for listening, and see you in the next episode of Simple Farmhouse Life.